On to this now. The mining industry says the country's poor rail network is letting them down. They are attributing job losses to this too. Some have even referred to Transnet freight rail's deterioration in performance as treasonous. Poor maintenance, a lack of spare parts for trains or locomotives, copper cable theft and vandalism have disrupted the state logistics firm. Let's have a deeper conversation now with those challenges and some of the recent successes with Bonginkosi Mabaso, who's Transnet Freight Rail's Chief Commercial Officer. Thank you very much for joining us in studio. And I mean, it's quite tough, the stance that business has taken against Transnet when it comes to the logistical issues. Perhaps we can start with a broad overview of business's view about the struggles and what you are currently working on in terms of actively trying to restore key parts of the rail network.
Thank you, Rufiwa, and good afternoon to you. You're absolutely spot on. The views that are expressed are quite harsh to begin with. But that said, we also appreciate the pressures that the mining industry, amongst many others, are faced with in that we are unable to move all available volumes and the entire production of the mining sector for exports. That said, though, we've always been very clear in making a call to invite even private sector to say, come to the party to resolve the three big issues that we sit with Transnet, some of which are not directly attributable to our ability or inability to do what we need to do. If you look, for example, at the issue of cable theft and vandalism, we've really gone all out on our end to try and curb as much as we can the number of incidents that take place or transpire. With that done, we've achieved a reduction in terms of cable theft, cable length lost from 1,600 kilometers to 1,100 kilometers. All of that through feats of what we've achieved in partnership with industry. Equally, the issue of locomotives has been one that we've been open about to say, without these critical tools of trade, we are unable to move volumes. If you look back 2017-18, the year where we did our highest volume, we were sitting with 2,200 locomotives available to us to service the industry. Today, we sit with 1,500, with the majority of those being out of commission due to spare parts and vandalism. We've gone out and renegotiated with the OEM, particularly CRRC, an agreement for maintenance and reliability guarantees for the locomotives. We've already on our part, we've done all we can in terms of those negotiations. However, there are certain elements of them coming back to the country that are outside of Transnet's direct influence that would require then as state organs such as SARS and the Reserve Bank to then come to the party. That said, like I said, we've always been very clear and transparent around what we can influence. We've gone out and done all we can to actually turn it around. And what we can't, unfortunately, we do call upon all the parties and, of course, stakeholders that are necessary in those processes to also come to the party.
Apart from the CRRC, which you say is still getting some finalization with other authorities, SARS and SAPS, as you've mentioned, what about the other calls to tender that you initiated earlier on in the year? Which ones have been finalized or closed, and which ones are in the finalization process so that those parts can start to be sourced?
We moved with speed in finalizing those to the point where from WebTech and Alstom being some of our OEMs for locomotives, they've started already bringing back locomotives into production. From the month of April, we've seen quite a good number of those locos coming back, which is why if you look at our performance this year compared to last year, there's an improvement. There's a direct correlation of available locomotives and volumes moved. The more locos we have coming back into production, of course, is the higher the volumes that we are able to move. With Alstom and WebTech, as I've indicated, we are seeing locomotives coming back, which, by the way, has even enabled us to start a completely new route that moves manganese to the port of East London, which is something that we've never done before. And we are able to therefore support the manganese industry better with an additional 1.5 million tons through these locomotives that are coming back from these other OEMs. So we are doing quite a lot rather than just sitting and waiting for the Chinese conversation to be concluded.
Yeah, I mean, you get to the good parts of Transnet before I ask you the question. I wanted to speak about that. It was something you announced last week sometime, and really the opportunities that it's presented in terms of the volumes that can now be transported and the trucks that can be reduced on the road. Tell us about that and the levels of reduction when it comes to the trucking that we'll see in the I suppose the movement on the network.
No, thanks, Sophia. So I've been getting a lot of calls from people who are saying precisely what is this project about, more than just the impact that it has. In layman's term, what is this about? Basically, the manganese basin is in the Northern Cape in an area called Hotazel. 80% of the world's reserves for manganese sits there. Our line from that area to Sishen, we operate a single line, meaning that we have traffic going on both directions sitting on the same line. So what we've done is by creating this loop, it's like a detour that enables one train to park while another train passes so that the trains can cross each other and traverse each other. And therefore, you are able to then increase the number of trains that run in that section. The project itself was intended for delivery by end of July. We pride ourselves to say we've done that ahead of schedule. By the 1st of July, it was already completed. To your point, about 40,500 trucks are going to be removed off the road with these additional trains that we will run. And this is traffic that would have predominantly gone to the port of Port Elizabeth, and therefore you would know the turmoil around trucks in that area that carry manganese. We've really then redirected that volume through to the port of East London.
Yeah. Is this project a blueprint in which you can implement across most of the network in the country? Because, I mean, we looked at the story and we thought, well, if they could do a project of this magnitude ahead of schedule, is it a template that they can then implement across the country? Is it something you're looking at, or are there other resources apart from the locos for you to use this as a blueprint?
No, absolutely. So we've got quite a number of projects on the go. Just looking at this particular one alone, the enablement of this Mamatwan loop, remember I said from Hotazel to Sishen is the line that was constrained. By unblocking that, it now enables us to look at projects that will increase capacity to Saldanha, Port Elizabeth, Durban, even Richards Bay. Those are in the pipelines. We are looking at those as we move forward, but all of them being triggered by this one. Now, to your point, absolutely, there are a number of other loops in the line between Hotazel and Gqeberha that we are looking at to also sort of lengthen, and that would be our long-term expansion project that we are earmarking for 2027-28 for the expansion of export manganese. We remain playing catch-up in terms of demand for exports versus what we are moving now. And this long-term expansion project is intended to do precisely that, to enable us to catch up in terms of allowing the manganese industry to export more.
Yeah, so that would then, I suppose, eliminate any form of backlog that would probably be in the pipeline at the moment. I want to speak a little closely to the partnership between Transnet and business, mining companies indicating, Exxaro, Kumba, that we are collaborating. There are collaborative efforts to assist where they can. I just want to know if they have contributed to the security component, where you've been able to reduce the kilometres of cable theft to 1,100, as you mentioned earlier, but also the maintenance of different networks. I know there was a decline for Kumba to take over the iron ore, if I'm not mistaken, network there. So what exactly is that collaboration looking like?
We continue to collaborate with the various industries. If you look at manganese industry as a start, the enablement of this 1.5 million tons requires procurement of additional rolling stock in terms of wagons, and we are engaging them and partnering with them in enabling those kinds of required resources. But equally, on the coal side, which is why we are unpleasantly surprised when we hear news such as job losses attributed to Transnet by our very own partners that we continue to engage on a continuous basis. If you look at security, the reduction of 33%, by the way, of cable length stolen is attributed to the partnerships that we have. Some of the industry players have come in with technologies, with expertise to sort of support certain areas of our line with security, which has improved our performance. That extends further. There are many other examples of partnerships that we have with the various industries, ranging from the steel industry to the coal industry to the ore industry, manganese. All of them, we open our doors to engage on a continuous basis, which is why we have these strategic engagements that occur on a continuous basis with them to support in delivering the volumes that we need to deliver.
Yeah, but so with the assertion that they have made on numerous occasions that jobs are being lost in the sector because of the bottlenecks and the infrastructure challenges, is that assertion completely false, or have there been some cuts that have taken place inevitably because of what's happening?
In our engagements with the various industries, there hasn't been any report that has been tabled in front of Transnet to say we are cutting back in terms of our jobs from this to that. However, whilst we acknowledge the issues of locomotives, which we've been open about, we acknowledge that that has reduced throughput. But equally, we've welcomed any assistance from the industries as well in supporting us bringing those locos back. But it is also to be noted, and I'm mentioning this because it is a reality, that some of these commodities, the markets are currently not the friendliest at this stage. Yeah. Look at coal, for example. It came down from $400. It's currently sitting at $99.80, which is a significant loss of value. Now, if there is a ramp down of production from these mines, it starts becoming blurry to say, is it only attributable to Transnet, or is it something that you can also link to the market conditions? We know the last time, particularly if you look at the coal industry, that the markets went below $90. A lot of our customers shut down, and we had stranded capacity at that point. And therefore, when a conversation of this nature comes up, you start wondering whether the markets have got a play in that as well. But other than that, our binding constraints have always been ones that we are not hiding. We've always been clear around the issue of locomotives and cable theft, and the very industries partner with us in resolving those.
Yeah, you've mentioned a few positive developments, and also I'm wondering, with all the projects that are in the pipeline, what can you assure your partners or those that you work with in the different industries about what we can see in the medium term when it comes to major improvement? What assurity are you able to give with some form of confidence to say there is active work here, we are collaborating with the National Ports Authority, everything is going to start flowing in a certain way in the medium term?
In the short, medium term, the return of the locomotives from the other OEMs, as I've mentioned, continues. Yeah. We've got a very clearly defined delivery schedule from them where they are bringing back locomotives. It started off slow in the month of April. We are seeing quite an aggressive ramp up from those that are non-SRRC. As they come in, they are already improving our strike rates in terms of rail. The stats speak for themselves in regards to that. In addition to that, the issue of security, we've also recently awarded, I think the last time I was here, when I spoke to you, I mentioned we are out in the market looking for a security service provider that will be paid on the basis of the outcome of the work that they've done. We've assigned and allocated that work. We are currently onboarding those security companies across our network, and already with them coming on board, the kinds of technologies and expertise that they bring will really make an impact in terms of curbing some of the cable theft incidents that we see. So the industry, as we engage them continuously, as early as Thursday last week, we were sitting with the chrome and ferrochrome industry, sharing exactly the same kinds of initiatives, which they are fully in support of. They are aware that we are making quite good strides in the areas that we can directly influence and control.
Yeah, every time I want to end the conversation, there are a couple of things I want clarity on again. You mentioned the security companies that are coming on board across the country along your infrastructure. Is there no collaboration with SAPS at all?
There is collaboration with SAPS. There was a command center that was set up where we get support from SAPS amongst many other law enforcement agencies. However, you'll acknowledge that we run a line of about 28,000 kilometers across the country. Even with SAPS presence, it remains that we cannot have a physical person guarding the line at every avenue and every corner, which is why we focus on using technologies to sort of arrest these incidents. The biggest area that we are also focusing on is to be able to turn the arrests that we achieve around to successful prosecutions. I think that's where potentially is still a bit of a challenge because we do arrest perpetrators, and we've had quite a good success rate in getting people behind bars. But insofar as keeping them there, of course, is an area that we are focusing on as well.
Yeah, I mean, Transnet, TFR has been very good in keeping us updated with the arrests that have been made over the last few months. The reason I asked the question about the SAPS is because one of the biggest criticisms around tenders or a call from different industry players to collaborate with a state-owned entity is the threat of any kind of malfeasance. But are you confident as TFR, you turning the tide, that has been dealt with and that everything is looked through a fine-tooth comb, and there's no kind of malfeasance when it comes to contracts that are awarded to different service providers?
Absolutely. At a time when we are challenged as we are with cable theft, perhaps when I say 1,600 kilometers of cable, it sounds a little less. It's actually 1.6 million meters of cable. It's the same thing, I know. We toned down these numbers between kilometers and meters. When you are dealing with that and you have an economy that relies on rail network and rail infrastructure, it would really be amiss of any of us if we were found to not have followed the right processes to be able to turn this business around. And therefore, we are quite confident that the processes that we've run in identifying the service providers have been through open market and have followed all the necessary governance requirements in order for us to get to a point of appointment. So we are fairly confident there.
Yeah. And then finally, and another exciting project is introducing emerging miners into the export of manganese. An update on that in particular.
Absolutely. So we've had our first emerging miner load through the port of Gqeberha. The trains are currently moving to build up their stockpile so that they can move out of the port of Gqeberha. We are excited, as we've said. We've allocated 2 million tons to emerging miners in the manganese space, and through the partnership with Kalahari, which is a previous emerging miner, black-owned mine, they've opened their gates for the mines to use their state-of-the-art rapid loading station that can turn around a train in 4 hours against our target of 12 hours, which is quite a significant improvement in our efficiencies for emerging miners. That is well on track. We've signed agreements with these emerging miners. They are moving their products to loading stations, and therefore we are starting to sort of bring them into the networks as we speak. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that update, and thank you for joining us in studio. That is Transnet Freight Rail's Chief Commercial Officer, Bonginkosi Mabaso, joining us in studio to give us that thorough update on the state-owned entity that, as he mentioned, is the bedrock of South Africa's economy along with ESCOM.